Welcome to Interesting Choices, the show where we take a look at obscure pieces of media that have made choices, and usually a lot of them.
I'm Kate.
I'm Sky.
What are we talking about this week, Sky?
This week we're talking about a film, a 1977 classic, Buffalo Rider.
Yeah. You may have already seen clips of this floating around a couple years ago, set to a fake song that they made up called "Guy on a Buffalo." But this is the Guy on the Buffalo movie that they took the clips from.
I read a little bit about that when I tried to do some research on it. I haven't watched those, but I know rifftrax did this movie.
Mm-hmm.
It has been rifftraxed. I haven't seen that either. This was my first experience.
Oh, so you went in cold with the saga of Buffalo Jones.
Buffalo Jones. In the movie, they call him Jake. I found out was a real guy. This is a largely fictitious account of his life, of Charles Jesse James, who was a buffalo hunter at first and then tried to breed buffalo, and that didn't work out too well.
This is one of the strangest movies that I've seen just from a production standpoint, since this was made in the 70s, right?
Yeah.
All of it was practical. Every effect was practical. But they get into some wild stuff in this. We'll talk about it a little later, but it surprises me this movie even got made.
I'm definitely on that boat.
So, I guess, do you want to give us the overview of the story of Buffalo Jones?
It starts out with the narrator, who will be your best friend throughout the entire movie. He will be your rock, your anchor, keeping you steady on this adventure. We're introduced to the state of affairs in the 1870s onward to the 1880s, 1885, I believe, when the buffalo was plentiful, and then buffalo hunters came along and made them not plentiful anymore.
The narrator dumps a lot of buffalo-related history on you.
It's the weird thing to me about it, like starting out, is he was kind of like selling the animals to you and leading up to the buffalo, the Cadillac of plains animals.
Yeah, I think they needed to set a context as to why all of these things were happening, but in general, you don't really need to go too much in depth on, hey, there were hunters and then there's some buffalo and they do some stuff. That's pretty much it.
And we're introduced pretty much immediately to the three main antagonists of the movie, such as they are.
Mm-hmm.
The hunter and two skinners, and one is heavily implied to be just a straight-up murderer, and the other one is just kind of a sycophant and hangs around.
Yeah. There's a surprising amount of murder in this movie.
There really is. I mean, I wasn't expecting anything coming into this, but I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't really expecting the amount of animal cruelty I saw.
Yeah, sorry about that. Content warning, animal violence.
Yeah, heads up. They start right away. They show buffalo or bison, I guess, if we're going to get technical about it, being shot. I tried to do some research to figure out what was up with that, but all I could find was a Reddit post where someone had said he'd talked to someone who'd worked on the movie and they had trained some buffalo to fall over when they felt themselves being hit by rubber bullets. But I mean, it really looks like they went out and shot some buffalo. That
seems like a very convenient excuse. We definitely spent some time training these buffalo to fall over when we shoot them with rubber bullets. This was in the era where there was not someone on set at all times taking care of the welfare of all of the animals and making sure that no animals were harmed in the making of this film. I think that sort of thing didn't become commonplace until sometime in the 80s, I believe.
I don't know off the top of my head, and I honestly forgot to look if there was the little no animals were harmed in the making of this movie. I do remember that I saw that it was filmed on location in Oregon and Utah. So
that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So all of the stunts in this practical. And that means there's a lot of animals fighting other animals, fighting people. Like, I'm surprised that any actors in this didn't get murdered. Just mauled, killed, eaten by a bear.
I mean, it wouldn't have surprised me. I know I saw during the brief search for stuff on YouTube that the main guy... gosh, I don't remember his name. His last name is spelled Guinn, and I don't know how that's pronounced. Gwyn. The lone stuntman listed in the credits. Yeah, and the titular Buffalo Rider himself. I guess he works at a buffalo ranch now, weirdly enough. But yeah, it goes straight from the buffalo hunters, who the narrator can't seem to decide whether if they're the worst or the coolest. It seems like,
oh, it's the romance of the West and the mysteries of the plains, as opposed to these guys are just dirty, filthy murderers who just kill innocent animals and then take their skin.
Yep, and then leave the meat to just rot out in the sun. So we spend almost I think we spend more time with them at the beginning of the movie than at any other point. Right up until the end.
I think it's like a solid 10 minutes before you even see Buffalo Jones.
But yeah, we go from them to Buffalo Jones, and it's pretty much he just gets introduced as he had a weird idea one day, and he found a baby buffalo, and he was going to learn it how to wear a saddle and then ride it. And that's what happens.
He went from being a buffalo hunter, and then he was just riding through a clearing one day, saw a baby buffalo. I think, was it getting attacked by wolves or something?
I think so. I mean, that tracks, but they're definitely a couple spots later on there. They try to build up the wolves as the buffalo's antagonist, paralleling the buffalo hunters as the man's antagonist, weirdly enough.
For a movie that's as sparsely acted and ephemeral, it has a lot of thought put into it.
Yeah.
Needlessly.
This was definitely someone's baby. Like I feel like they sat down and they wrote chapters of a script, because there's definitely very clear demarcations of, prologue, hunters, Jake meets a buffalo, and then on each section is kind of not really bookended, but it abruptly just switches to the next thing. There isn't really any kind of smooth transition to things. It's almost like a bunch of vignettes.
It feels like it could almost be a weekly show.
Yeah.
So he finds this baby buffalo and then raises it sort of for fun until it's big enough, and then he gets the weird idea of, well, I'm just going to try to put a saddle on this thing.
Yeah. Hey, what if I didn't buy a horse?
He had a horse. He rode in on it, but he's like, no, I'm going to be the guy on the buffalo.
I'm going to be different.
And there's a prolonged sequence of him trying to throw a saddle onto this buffalo that clearly isn't having it.
Oh, yeah.
That's the thing that really surprises me the most about this movie, is how wild the buffalo feels under almost every circumstance.
Yeah, because I know you can train buffalo, but you can't really. They haven't been tamed for a reason. They're just one of those animals that just doesn't do well like cows do. And I don't know if that buffalo there versus the one that's later that does have a saddle that he does ride is the same buffalo, but it feels like most of the time it's just barely putting up with this guy, his shenanigans.
Yeah, I would be very curious to see if he had any... Like, was this a situation of, this guy handles the buffalo for a living, we'll just put him in our movie and teach him how to act a little bit? Or we'll take this actor and then we'll just make him get used to this buffalo, which is very strong and very dangerous.
Yeah. I don't know. I really tried to research this. I could not find anything about anyone involved, the circumstances of production. I mean, aside from the one interview I found on YouTube, which I probably should have watched looking back on it, but there just really isn't a whole lot about this out there.
That's what makes it so fascinating for me, because there are so many sequences where you're kind of in awe that they got the shot without anyone being murdered.
Oh, yeah.
And him trying to ride the buffalo is one where he's kind of just dancing around these big sharp horns, throwing this blanket onto the back of the buffalo, and then swings up on top of it, flailing like a rodeo rider. He can't secure a saddle and stirrups and things super well on a buffalo. It just wasn't built for that.
And even like a custom-made one. I mean, like, you can tame them for sure, or not tame them. You can train them, but they're not tame.
Mm-hmm.
Because the saddle on a horse has to be secured underneath, with straps and such. And you'd probably get kicked in the face if you tried to do that with a bison. And I'm sure that happened more than once.
I have the utmost respect for the man playing Buffalo Jones. Well, I was going to say Jake.
They call him that too. They go back and forth.
Presumably his last name is Jones, or did they just decide collectively? Because at some point, the townspeople just started calling him Buffalo Jones.
I don't know. I'm just going to pull that up real quick. It's apparently two different articles on the man this is based off of.
So this was based off of a real historical character.
Kinda. I mean, the same way that League of Extraordinary Gentlemen is based off real historical characters. There was an actual person who didn't do any of this. Okay, so the real man's name was Charles Jesse Jones. And in the movie, his name is Jake Jones. If I remember right, the way he got the nickname was just, he said he'd killed more buffalo than anyone else. And nobody knew if that was true. They just started calling him that. And of course, in the movie, it's just the people just started calling him Buffalo Jones because he had a buffalo.
Well, in the world of this film, it is quite a sight to see a man on a buffalo. It is the sort of thing that rocks your worldview to the point where you will do anything to right this wrong that has been imposed upon you and rid the world of mans on buffalo.
I think after he successfully bonds, quote unquote, with Samson, which is his name for the buffalo, and the narrator calls him throughout the rest of the movie. There's like an extended sequence of them running around.
They meet a bear.
There were a couple bears. It's all kind of blending together.
The first time they meet a bear, and it's just like a brown bear or something, or a black bear probably. Brown bears are the ones that'll kill you.
Yep.
They just ride up to it. This guy in the buffalo, about 15 feet away from this bear, you just ride past, setting up Chekhov's bear for later.
I'm sorry, I just watched it yesterday, and so much of this movie is just a blur.
For a movie that is so light on plot, it is actually really tough to remember because a lot of it feels like it's cobbled together from stock nature footage. Definitely.
I'll probably say this a few times. I know I've mentioned it before, but without the narrator, I felt like I was lost in this movie. Like I was adrift in the sea that was this movie until the narrator came in to tell me what was going on.
At some point, he fights a mountain lion?
There's a couple. That's a little later. I think we haven't even gotten to the first mountain lion yet. If I remember right, they're having fun, and then they're spotted by a stereotype, a Native American. And I distinctly remember having kind of zoned out at this point, and I don't know exactly what he wanted. I think he wanted to kill and eat the buffalo, and he tries to shoot Jake.
Yeah, the very racist Native American stereotype apparently thought that him riding the buffalo was big magic, is what they said. And so, or big medicine or something, I'm not sure. But whatever it was, he definitely wanted this buffalo. So he just, at very close range, took a rifle shot at Jake, our intrepid buffalo rider.
Yeah, and then Jake manages to get the drop on him. Somehow that's where I came back into it. And then he socks him real good and smashes the rifle on a tree.
And then kicks him in the foot. It's this like weird little thing, but he just like comes up and the prone native person is on the ground and he just kicks him in the foot. It's wonderful. It's a great little character moment.
And the narrator's like, Jake wanted to kill him, but he decided a broken jaw was better. Like trying to paint him. It's like, I know the guy shot at you, but I mean,
you know, he's the hero, I guess.
Yeah.
Question mark.
Okay. He's the protagonist, that's for sure.
Yeah. And then it's like, but that wasn't the last person that would want to take the buffalo away from Jake.
Oh, yeah. God, and then, is there more? Because I know the song comes in at some point where they wrote what I can only describe as a ballad about the Buffalo Rider.
It's a wonderful song. I wish we had the rights to play it because it is so good.
It's not bad. Like, I honestly mistook it for actual music a couple times.
It could be a folk song in a weird alternate world where folk songs about Buffalo Riders were still popular in the 70s.
And then the next plot point we get to is he runs, because it's kind of like there's these vignettes and then there's stretches of not a whole lot happening. And then we get to the next chapter, I guess, which is him running into the hunters for the first time, if I remember right. Or do we cut to them and they're not having a good time?
They were complaining about their shoes and the way some guy was walking because they'd lost all their horses and were down a like one pack horse.
And one of them was just like, if you don't like it, just go up to Denver and rent a hotel.
So I think that was part of the impetus for we got to shoot this guy and take his buffalo, which is kind of a just random thing to think about. A guy that you see riding up on a buffalo, you're like, huh, that's a thing. Guess I'm going to shoot him and take his buffalo.
Yeah, and the movie further establishing that these people are just absolute scum, which it will continue to hammer home every time we see them.
Unlike with the Native American who actually took a shot, they, like many criminals, fell to infighting and accidentally set off one of their rifles into the air, discharging into the sky, alerting our intrepid Buffalo Rider to the shenanigans that are afoot.
He gets hurt somehow. I missed how, because again, I kind of zoned out sometimes.
He comes up to him while they're fighting, and he basically has his hand on his pistol, and he's like, how you boys doing? And they're like, we're doing good. Sorry, we didn't mean anything by that. We're just gonna go. And he's like, all right, well, I'm gonna go now. And then he, like, goes down the hill maybe about 100 yards and goes, like, slightly near this tree, and they're like, let's shoot him. Yeah, let's just shoot him. And so they just turn around and shoot him. His whole show of like being stealthy and sneaking up on these guys with a buffalo, mind you, was for nothing. They just turn around and shoot him in the shoulder anyway, or in the side.
Yeah. Oh man. So Jake gets shot. And then Samson, sensing that his dear friend is injured, wanders around a whole lot looking for help.
Yeah, he finds this old homesteader guy, and then, like everyone else, he's like, why is this guy in a buffalo? This is wild. But he didn't think to kill him. That was his mistake.
It'll come back to bite him for sure.
Yep. So he leads our intrepid Jake kind of slumped in the saddle for a very long time, back to his homestead where his loving wife is cooking dinner or something.
I don't know what she was doing. It looked like she was working on a sawhorse, but that might have just been the quality messing with my eyes.
Yeah, so you can find this on YouTube, but it's all very poor quality because, you know, it was shot on film maybe, but the transfer is onto video. So it's pretty atrocious.
And another reason I'm thankful for the narrator, because anytime any of the characters speak, I could barely tell what they were saying. It's like, come back, narrator, tell me what they're saying.
Yeah, there's a lot of like marble mouth.
They nurse him back to health.
It takes a while.
Yeah. I mean, he hangs out with them, and then Jake starts a new trend of adopting everything.
In the homestead, you see...
Right, they don't find him. There's just a raccoon there, and the narrator's like, hey.
Yeah, there's a raccoon there. They just named it Bandit. And this movie's so weird. It stops being the adventures of Jake Jones, Buffalo Rider, and becomes the side quest of Bandit.
Yeah, it's the Bandit Adventure Hour. I swear to God, that entire segment was like 25, 30 minutes, maybe 40 minutes of just the raccoon's adventures.
It's a solid third of the runtime. It just follows this raccoon out, like going to the stream on a cold winter's day. So it was a while that Jake was recovering in this person's homestead. So I don't know. Is he homeless?
I don't know. I mean, I think he was just living off the land until he found the buffalo, and then a bunch of stuff just happened to him. And now he's bumming off these two people.
Are all cowboys homeless? Is this just a thing? Cowboys don't have homes?
I mean, there is that song Home on the Range, but yeah, he's not really a cowboy, so I don't know that applies.
Well, yeah, I guess all Buffalo boys. Homeless.
Oh, man. So, yeah, the narrator, very much like a storybook. At first I thought they just got random stock nature, but so much of this stuff happens that they had to have staged some of it. I don't know how. And then they just set it to narration.
This sequence, above all else, blew my mind because either they were masters at staging animal violence, or they just happened to find the most wonderful raccoon stock footage and stitched together into this narrative. Because what happens to this poor raccoon?
The narrator's like, one day Bandit was going for an evening stroll, and it would be an evening he'd remember for the rest of his life.
And then it gets attacked by a cougar.
Yeah, like for realsies.
For real. There's just like... The cougar pounces, but then Bandit bluffs. There's like 5 solid minutes of this raccoon hissing at a cougar and then like driving it back and then retreating and driving it back until it finally gets cornered in a brush.
Yeah, and then the cougar grabs the raccoon's neck, and the raccoon's like pawing at its face. You can see it doing it. So these are live animals. They didn't throw like a stuffed raccoon at a mountain lion. And it tries to walk off with him, and then it falls in the ice, and then it kind of gives up on having a raccoon dinner, and they go their separate ways.
Yeah. Well, it's even weirder in the actual play-by-play of it, because it grabs it, and then the narrator implies that the cougar tries to drown the raccoon.
Oh, God, right.
In the river. But then as he's mashing this poor raccoon's head against the ice. It's like, oh, seems like it's too shallow. Well, he's going to try somewhere deeper. And then it drags it further into the water like a crocodile. And then just starts trying to basically drown a raccoon who somehow fights out. It's so wild. It's so wild.
So much animal cruelty.
How would you even try to stage that?
I don't know. And the thing, that is all in a league of its own so far. But then Bandit's on... I think Bandit's still in the water at this point. And then there was but then there was a flash flood, and lo and behold... a big wave of chunks of ice and river water, and it's did they blow up a dam downstream or what?
Yeah, it is a hell of a flood. It's the sort of thing that you would see a glacial river in Alaska or something, not Utah, I guess, or wherever this is. Huge sheets of ice that this raccoon is leaping from sheet to sheet, trying to escape all of this. And then you see it on the shore, and it's well, that was a rough day for Bandit.
Bandit sure had an adventure. I'm Bandit. They had to have staged that or found stock footage, because, like, how can you be that lucky to just happen to capture a flood?
What production crew would have so much hubris to try to stage a flash flood in a way that, like, I can't even imagine? I can't imagine what you do. Like, I guess explosives, but wow, that would be, like, one shot. That's all you get, and you're destroying nature while you're doing it. The 70s.
I don't know, like, maybe there was a beaver dam upstream, or... Because, like, considering everything else in the movie, I feel like it's not that much of a stretch that they would have tried something like that. But they pulled it off, too, which is amazing in and of itself.
Yeah, actually, it's a very cool sequence, although it is a bit of a non sequitur. Just watching it, you're like, holy shit, they did all... Wow, I've never seen this animal try to drown another animal, and then, it's so good.
I just mouth agape this entire time, pretty much, at this point in the movie.
But Bandit's adventures aren't over, because turns out Bandit actually wasn't a boy all along.
Which they never said. Like, they say he, but they don't ever make a point of saying that Bandit's a boy, but as much as they make a point of saying that he's not a boy.
Yeah.
Or she.
Yeah, because... Turns out Bandit was pregnant this entire time while fighting the mountain lion and floods and all this other stuff. It's like Elena from Fast and the Furious.
Yeah, that was the transition that goes from winter to spring. And that's when we find out that Bandit had babies. And they neatly stack them on a very thin branch over some rushing river water. And we get to enjoy... I mean, we never see anyone pushing baby raccoons into some water, but... They clearly intended that to happen because it did.
Yeah. The amount of things that these animals get into, amazing. Back on the homestead, Jake has recovered and he's basically just hanging out with this couple.
Right.
And then one day the husband just doesn't come back.
And then we get more bears.
Yeah, this is where they fire Chekhov's bear. This old homesteader guy's out and he gets attacked by one bear. He's mauled pretty badly.
Yeah.
This guy is, I don't know. Even under stunt conditions, I would not want to tangle with a bear.
I mean, I could see how they might have done it with, if that was the bear's trainer and he was just kind of gumming on the guy's arm and they inserted the sound effects. But they definitely really, it's a pretty, I don't know if I'd say violent. It's a thing. He gets attacked by a bear, and then they cut away and they cut back, and he's laying prone. And the narrator swoops in to let us know he's only playing dead at this point.
But he's still pretty injured. And then Jake comes up, and he's looking for the guy, and another bear comes along. So you see this shot, which is all composed there. It's not a special effect of this old prospector. I think Jake was there. A large brown bear... and then another large bear fighting each other.
Yeah, they're just viciously... It might have been amplified by added sound effects. These might have been bears that were just playing around, but it really seems like they're actually fighting. And there's just a guy laying like 5 feet away on the ground.
And I think it was the actual actor, because you see some shots of his face as he's getting up, as Jake's rescuing him. And so... they're just casually having a bit of a conversation like 10 feet from these bears who are just going at it with claws and teeth and everything.
That's what I do remember, because the bears are going bananas on each other, and the old man's laying on the ground. Then Jake shows up and he just starts firing blanks at them, and the narrator's like, Jake fired as much as he could, but it didn't bother those bears. And he's like, why did you even do it at all? They seemed pretty distracted. You could have just dragged him away. It seemed unnecessary.
Unnecessary violence against animals is the theme of this movie.
It is the byline of this movie. They get the old man home, and wouldn't you know it, his injuries aren't as bad as the narrator led us to believe.
Yeah, it's just a flesh wound.
Someone just smeared jam on his leg. He's fine.
I think that's when Jake decides that he should set off and...
should probably stop couch surfing.
Yeah, he has been there for like a season plus, which I mean, hospitality being what it is, but I think they were actually pretty happy to have him. They're like, "Oh, you should stay. It's been nice living with you. He's such a nice boy in your buffalo."
I didn't mention it before, but at least to me, it seemed like the wife was significantly younger than the old man.
She seemed like she was in her late 40s, early 50s, and he was like
85.
I can't really tell because it's very grainy, but
right.
There was definitely an age gap. But they're like, "Oh, if you're going out, some of our kin are out there, and my brother has the reddest hair of anyone." And it's like, okay, immediately cut to
a wagon train.
Yes.
Which I missed that part. So when they mention it later, it was completely out of left field for me. So I was like, oh, so they're related now. Okay. Our intrepid buffalo hunters, having run out of buffalo to mercilessly kill, have turned to banditry.
Because they don't have any horses, they ran out of buffalo and like, we have too many buffalo hides. We got like 27 hides. How are we going to get them back to town? All of our horses are gone, but we kept shooting buffalo for some reason. They spot this easy prey with this wagon's camped out a little bit overnight, and the wife has a baby.
Chekhov's baby. These
buffalo hunters are like, we should take that wagon. We should take that wagon. We should take those horses. Let's just do it. That's the Wild West for you. Whatever you want, you just point at it, and then you shoot it, and it dies, and then you take it.
And then you skin it, and you sell its skin for a questionable profit.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they didn't do that to these settlers, but who knows? Maybe that's B-roll.
Well, they took their stuff.
They did take that one guy's shirt. So
yeah, they did the robbery cliche of just trying on everyone's clothes while they're rummaging through stuff.
Yeah, so they shoot the husband, and then the wife picks up the baby and just starts running. It's just like, ah!
She bolts and then dies off screen.
Yeah, some guy jumps out of a bush and presumably knifes her?
The implied murderer goes into commit some actual murder.
Mm-hmm.
Is no longer implied.
And then they take all this stuff, including a watch and some other stuff.
Some whiskey.
Yeah, but then they leave a very telling clue.
It'll lead to their downfall. The narrator makes it seem like they just kind of left something there, but it really looks like one of them just straight up tied a scarf to a stick and left it there.
Like a hobo bindle, basically.
Yeah. So they take the horses to carry all their stuff and the stuff they already had. And I think Jake shows up immediately after. There might be something in between. I can't remember.
He sees the scene and he's like, oh no, these people are dead. And then finds the baby, which is still alive.
Somehow. And finds the scarf and takes the time to bury the people. And we kind of get a wide shot of him holding the baby and staring down at what presumably is the mom's corpse. It really looked just like someone put a glove next to a bush. Because they wanted to hide her body for, propriety, being proper. And then Jake continues his trend of adopting things and takes this child as his own for now.
His whole plan is to get back to the homestead, and he's about 4 days' ride from the homestead where the people were tending him. And now that he has this baby and news of the murder of their relatives, he has to get back there as quickly as possible. So he decides to do the Lord of the Rings thing and go over
the mountains. Yeah. They try to set up this ticking clock of this baby needs food. And Jake, being an adult white man, does not know how to feed a child.
Yeah, he's real bad at it. He's like, do I boil a shoe? What he ends up doing is he just finds a porcupine just walking around, picks it up by the tail. He's like, I guess I'll make a broth out of this porcupine and try to feed it to this tiny baby.
At some point just after, we get Cougar Attack number 2, I think.
Yeah, there's more just wailing on a cougar. He just, lays into him.
Actually, hands around the throat, punching a big cat on camera.
I mean, I know big cats are tough. I've seen Tiger King. When they get up in you and you just kind of gotta bat them off, you do what you can. But, man, this guy, this actor, wrestling with buffalo, wrestling with cougars, just having a raccoon run all over his face, wild.
Oh, and then there was a really brief kind of setup of like the continuation of the animosity between the wolves and Samson just after he leaves, as one tries to sneak up on him, and then they actually filmed a bison kicking a wolf.
Yeah. Was that... I think that was when... So he goes over the mountain, but he has to cross a river before he can get to the homestead, and it's that, like, wolf goose grain problem. Like, how do you get things across the river while not having two things that will eat each other in the same place? It's that, but with a baby and a buffalo.
Kind of. The wolves don't show up then. That's its whole other thing. Because he takes off his shoes and he puts on worse shoes to he tries to ride Samson across. And just, you can clearly see him making the buffalo tip over in the water. And then there's like, Jake kept the baby's head above water as best he could. It's like, that buffalo's bouncing around a lot. That kid's probably brains just scrambled.
Yeah.
At this point. And it really looks like he made it to the other side, but the narrator tells us that he did not, in fact, make it to the other side, so he has to swim the baby across himself. Mm-hmm. And so he takes off his shoes and puts on worse shoes.
Well, I mean, you got to put on your swimming shoes, right?
I guess. So he takes the baby across, and then he kind of drags the buffalo most of the way across. Mm-hmm. And then there was another wolf attack at night at some point after the whole porcupine broth incident.
Yeah. Again, all of these little vignettes get kind of mixed up in your head. It's really hard to keep the chronology correct because they pretty much can happen whenever.
You could pull them out and plug them into place pretty much anywhere. I mean, it's the movie's just going like, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. But then they make it across, despite Jake's best efforts.
Yeah, this guy does not know how to ford a stream. He should have caulked the wagon and floated it across.
I feel like pretty much anything would have been better than what he did.
Yeah.
Purposefully failing is kind of like the lowest rung of the ladder. Gosh, and then, so he makes it across. And then I think they then get to settlers, or do we cut to the hunters and there's trouble in paradise there? Because I know that definitely happens.
Somewhere in this chronology, the hunters get into a tiff.
They get into a bit of a fight. One of them's going deaf. One of them's a murderer. Another one thinks a lot of the guy who's going deaf. And a knife fight breaks out and then stops. And then two of them kick the murderer off the island.
Yep.
And that doesn't really end up leading to a whole lot. It's just something that happens.
It was there to fill some time, I guess, because it was utterly unnecessary.
Yeah. We haven't gotten to it yet, but the way their story ends, he could have been there and it wouldn't have changed anything.
Not one single whit at all. I hoped it would have been a little bit more involved, trying to track down the murderer guy. I'm not sure if you've ever seen it, but there is this Canadian reality show called Man Tracker.
I remember that. Oh my God.
And I just started watching the episodes on YouTube because someone told me about it. And it feels like it should have been that, right? Like Jake is the man tracker and he's tracking his man across the prairie on a buffalo.
Or wherever.
Yeah, wherever.
Yeah.
But no, it's not that. It's not that involved.
No. Yeah. So then we cut back to Jake. He makes it to the homestead and he has to deliver the news. And we get just the worst acting. I think it's technically acting.
They did not choose these people for their acting prowess. I think it's like, are you willing to stand next to wild animals? Yes, no.
But it's, they get over it pretty quick. And they have a very lukewarm discussion about whether or not Jake should track down these people and kill them. And he decides to go ahead and do it because...
Yeah, why not?
There's still the rest of the movie and something's going to happen. We can't cut back to Bandit. That story's over.
But the rest of the movie, if you count the minutes of the climax of the movie and the denouement versus Bandit's magical fun time mystery sequence, it is far, far more raccoon heavy than actual wrapping up the plot.
Yeah, like it almost feels like they added that in afterwards to take up a big chunk of the middle. Mm-hmm. And I mean, they could have just gotten a bunch of random shots and then had the narrator written something up to have the narrator talk over. But Jake sets out to track him a man's, or three, and they wind up in town. I don't remember if they mentioned the town name.
It's some random Wild West facade. You've seen it.
Western town trademark, a very obvious, like, touristy, like they filmed this at a tourist trap.
Yeah, if you just, like, look up Ghost Town, Utah, you'll find this place.
The buffalo hunters get there first, and one of them steals the other guy's watch, who he had stolen from the dead people, and just to pay for some drinks at the bar. And then Jake shows up shortly afterwards. And one of my favorite small things is him riding into town, just because there's a horse on hooked up to a cart near the path where the buffalo is, and that horse is not okay with the buffalo being there. Like, it takes like a 3-foot step to the side. It's like immediately aware that's going on.
This is presumably his first time in this town, and all eyes kind of turn to him, and they're like, "Oh, is that guy on a buffalo? What?
Goodness me!"
But he rides up to some random townsperson,
blacksmith,
yeah, and is like, "Have you seen the owners of this horse?" Which, come to think of it, how the heck does he even know what those horses look like?
Yeah. Wow, I don't know. Because he's never seen... Because either it's the ones they lost in the first place, which he's never seen, or it's the ones that they took from the covered wagon people, which he has also never seen.
I think maybe that one horse was the first one that was the pack horse when we first saw them.
Okay.
Maybe I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he recognized that horse from when he was initially in that altercation where he eventually got shot.
Right.
But then,
yeah,
dude just narcs him out.
Yep. They're over in the saloon, which clearly has a name that he doesn't use.
It's the
Crystal Palace.
The Crystal Palace. And wow, this sequence. The sequence of the Crystal Palace, mind-blowing. I thought, I don't know what I thought. I did not expect, like, it barges into the movie as much as the buffalo barges through those doors into that bar. Yeah,
the scene.
Jake straight up rides the buffalo through the swinging saloon doors and then just starts wrecking the place and shooting. Just shooting.
Left and right. He kills the two guys. I'm sure he hits other people, which, they were around them, but they're not, presumably not as bad.
No, they're just like random bar people who got trampled at best. And I think there's one sequence where he knocks over a furnace onto one of the guys.
He shoots him and then knocks the furnace over, which I thought, considering the rest of the movie, they were going to light him on fire or something. But no, just the indignity of having a furnace on his leg as he dies.
Yeah, it was utterly unnecessary. And then you're left with this sort of pause where you're like, he just came in there and murdered two mans, and everyone just seems totally okay with it.
Yep.
No one's like, get that guy on the buffalo, and then the narrator has to quickly swoop in and be like, but he smoothed it over with the sheriff.
He talked to the sheriff, like, as he's obviously riding out of town. He talked to the sheriff and explained what had happened. The sheriff agreed to said he could get a posse together, for that one guy who was still wandering around. But Jake said, nah.
Yeah. And then he just goes and finds that guy.
And runs him over. That's it.
End of film. And then the ballad plays again.
Oh, we find out, I don't know if it was at that point or when the kid gets returned, but we find out that the narrator's the baby.
Yes. Yeah,
No.
The narrator's grandfather is the baby.
Okay. That makes more sense.
Either way, it could have just been the same, right? Like, it didn't really matter.
It could have been neither. The narrator could have been one of the pumas. Like, it had no bearing on anything.
Yeah, like there's no reason to track down that guy. There's no reason for that narrator to be related to that baby. Like there's no reason for anything other than we just thought we had an idea for a cool scene and then we filmed it and then we just wrote the barest sketch of a plot to string it all together.
Yeah, plot's being a little generous. It's like, I think you said overview earlier, and I think that movie is just an overview of some events that someone narrated over.
Yeah, I would love to see the director's cut version without the narration. Just this,
oh god,
just this long tone poem about the loneliness of the West and this weird old man that rides around on a buffalo.
And then just all the scenes where the narrator's telling us what the animals are thinking and feeling and doing, and then take that away, and it's just, there's a raccoon on some ice. Oh, there's a cougar. Now they're getting at it.
I wouldn't recommend it, but I would recommend watching the Guy on a Buffalo little short movies on YouTube, because they give you all of the good parts of that movie without any of the filler.
Having not seen either that or the rifftrax, I'd say either one's going to be a good substitute for the movie.
Yeah, this is not one that is a hidden gem by any means. Like, Island City, for all of its faults, you can watch by yourself and have a kind of okay time.
It really, that one felt like they kind of swung for the fences, maybe not because they knew that was going to be the end of it. Like a lot of shows will swing for the fences when they know they're going to get canceled, but they swung for the fences out of optimism. Mm-hmm. But they still swung for the fences. And this one just feels like someone wrote a script that they were very, very pleased with and put themselves together something that they felt was good enough.
Or the opposite, where they just wanted to do some cool stunts, and then they're like, it's fine. It feels like, when you're a teenager or preteen, right? The 11, 12 sort of era where you're really excited to do cool things and like you want to be a spy and you're going to film all this cool stuff, and you and your friends get a video camera and you go into the backyard and you just film each other jumping off of things and like slightly getting hurt but having a good time. And then maybe there's a plot, but mostly it's just action for the sake of doing action.
Yeah, I could definitely see it as the only credited stuntman, the main character, just writing up a list of things that he wanted to do, bringing it to a friend, was like, I could write a script around that.
Yeah, there's probably a lot of drug money that went into this film.
I would be surprised. I definitely don't recommend it by itself unless you're high or with friends or both.
Yeah, this is not a sit and watch by yourself. That would be kind of a dark time, honestly.
I did it. I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah, to be honest, I was playing video games kind of intermittently while I was watching it and didn't miss much, but that's why I had to rewind some.
There really wasn't a lot here in terms of like camera work. They just sort of pointed the camera at what was going on. Didn't think much about it after that. But the one thing that honestly stuck out to me the most was the costuming. Not because it's especially good, but because it felt like everyone just grabbed whatever beige t-shirt they could get their hands on.
Everyone was very just dirty and had the worst wigs.
Oh, God.
Like, all of the hunters had just these atrocious wigs that I guess were supposed to make them look shaggy,
gruff.
But it just made them just look very terrible. But how old do you think the Buffalo Rider was? Because he had this giant squirrel on his face of facial hair that obscured like the lower half of it, so I couldn't tell if he was in his 20s or in his 30s.
Oh God, I forgot to. After the Cougar Attack, there's a brief moment where the narrator's like, the cougar sure left his mark on him, and then they just have the camera pointed at his back, and there's just like the two smallest red makeup pencil dots on his back and like one line on the other shoulder. It's like, all right, sure.
This was a movie that really feels like someone wanted to get this movie made, but didn't super know how movies were made, but just gave it their best shot.
It really just feels like this was just somebody's baby, and they wanted to get it out in the world one way or another.
They probably met this actor guy. He must have an established relationship with that buffalo, right? Even if it's a couple months pre-production, he had to learn to ride it, to handle it, to not be jittery around it, or alternatively, they found a guy that just rode a buffalo, and they're like, do you want to be in a movie? We're going to make it about a guy in a buffalo.
Oh, gosh, that reminds me. I was doing research. Let me see if I can find it. And I pulled up the IMDb, and there was one review that I actually wanted to read. This has 2 stars on IMDb, by the way.
That's generous.
4.5 out of 10. Buffalo Jones is played by Rick Gwynn. So he's actually been in other stuff, something called Space Patrol and Mountain Charlie, which I've never heard of.
So I just did a search for Rick Gwynn, and someone did an interview with him for their website, ChristyDavidson.com. And it says, which came first, the role or the writer? And apparently Rick grew up in Park City, Utah, and then was at a wild animal compound and was like, buffalo are pretty cool. I'm going to try to ride that. And then he threw a saddle on it and then just became the guy just riding a buffalo. And I guess then the movie happened because he had the skills, and people were like, holy crap, Hollywood's going to pay a lot of money to watch a guy in a buffalo.
I mean, it definitely feels like that's what happened.
You hear about actors training for their films, right? They'll learn to play instruments, they'll get like jacked, but the skill set for riding a buffalo is so specific. It doesn't seem like the sort of thing you could learn in a short amount of time. It probably takes a while to get comfortable enough to do the stuff that he did. But if he had experience in a wild animal park, that would also explain why he's like, whatever, bears, cougars.
I can't imagine them just throwing someone who didn't know what was going on into all these situations. Okay, I found it. It was a user review. So this is the review, Guy on a Buffalo, written by Professor Vengeance. I was standing on a ledge about to jump to my death when I saw this movie. It not only saved my life, but I went on to become a rich Western writer. The film is an epic tale of a man and his mount. The world would have been a much darker place without this masterful piece of cinema. In my hometown, we now have a mandatory once-a-week viewing of this film where everyone gathers around so we can revisit the trials and tribulations that Buffalo Jones endures. We are doing our best to get the raccoon inducted into the Acting Hall of Fame, maybe even get its little paw prints on the Walk of Fame in L.A. Thank you, Buffalo Rider. You saved my life. That's what you did. Heart, heart, heart.
I think there are a fair amount of people out there that genuinely love this movie for reasons.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, no matter how bad something is, someone out there loves it. And I think there were 2 synopses. One is an actual synopsis, and one is what I can only assume were lyrics to the Guy on the Buffalo song.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's Buffalo Rider, the 1977?
77, yeah. I think it's made 76, released in 77, quote-unquote released. I think somewhere in the movie it said 78, but that might have just been the picture quality.
Sure. So Buffalo Rider, the 1977 masterpiece about a guy on a buffalo. Look up Guy on a Buffalo. That's really all you need. Save yourself 90 minutes. Unless you want to see that totally sweet raccoon and the flash flood. That's actually pretty cool.
That's pretty cool. And the baby raccoons are really cute until they get thrown into a river.
Yeah, maybe if you're squeamish about animal violence, take a pass on this one.
Yeah. I would only recommend with friends or not at all.
Yeah, this doesn't strike me as a first date type movie.
I mean, not unless you're purposefully trying to make a bad impression.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I could see if you had like an arranged marriage or something. And you just really, you're like, this is my favorite movie. Let's watch it together.
There's a sitcom episode right there. Oh, well, that was Buffalo Rider.
Buffalo Rider.
They sure made some interesting choices.
Yeah, go listen to the song. It's actually pretty dope.
I think I'm going to do it after we're done here. But
both the song in the movie and then the guy in the Buffalo song, also pretty dope. I'm thinking about trying to do a cover of the movie song because it's a pretty good ballad, honestly.
Yeah. I think like maybe like a harder guitar on there. You could definitely pull something off with it. Maybe like more of like an 80s musical aesthetic.
Mm-hmm. Or just a soulful folk ballad. Just about just Buffalo Jones.
I wouldn't mind hearing a hair metal rendition of it.
I guess if we ever do bonus content.
I have sung once in public and never again.
All right, Sky. Well, thanks for watching some interesting choices with me.
I'm Sky. You can find me on Twitter at @shard_corso, SHARD_CORSO.
And I'm Kate. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, other places as Army of Meat. That is where you will find me. Talk about Buffalo. Also follow my SoundCloud for my sweet acoustic ballad rendition of Buffalo Rider.
Coming this summer.